Well, if you want to talk about the Queen's culture, I would argue that football is really the center pin of it. Football has been with Queen's for over a century. It is not just a game at Queen's. I mean, for some people it is a game, clearly the players and the real aficionados of football. But it's the kind of culture that has organized itself around football at Queen's. For Queen's, it was football. It has installed itself at the center of Queen's culture and is important beyond what actually happens on the gridiron. It's a kind of reflection of Queen's values, and you can load onto it other things, the Gaelic tradition, the tartans, the pipes, the very name of the team, the Gaels, whatever you call it, the reunion, the homecoming weekend, the alumni weekend, always pivoted around a Saturday afternoon football game, preceded by a rally, followed by a principal's tea, pretty tame stuff, a dinner in the evening, a church service the next morning, but the point was the football game.
Football occurred before homecoming. People decided once past a certain level, when there were lots of alumni that wanted to come back to the university, that the fall was the logical time to do it. Homecoming very quickly became sort of associated with it, almost synonymous with the football game.
It is a tremendous transmitter of the kind of collegiality and cohesiveness that Queen's traditionally has prided itself on. The bond between the alumni and the faculty and students here now, that was the organizing point. You have this supplemented crowd of alumni coming here, and there are all sorts of events arranged around it. So it's very definitely a different event. It's a weekend event as opposed to an afternoon event.
It's always had this sort of tradition of family and warmth and so on and so forth that people want to come home in the fall. Right. So I'm Commerce 66. And I know whenever we discuss our reunions, the first focus is is there a home, football game, and we have to go to the football game. Certainly, the 1920s was one of the two golden eras for Queen's football. There was a tradition of football before the First World War, and then after the First World War, that was a kind of a critical period.
In the 1920s, we get automobiles, the alumni grows. There is, many cultural historians argue, a kind of nostalgia in the 1920s, and alumni weekends was one aspect of that.
I think they just decided that this was the one thing they were going to seize on.
Remember, the rivalries were very intense then. We were in a much smaller league. We tended to play McGill, Toronto, and Western. So there was a real hate-on when we played those teams. And so you could pin your college loyalty on this. So the homecoming was very important, and you see what football does here, as it does in American college. It reinforces the loyalty of the alumni. This wasn't just a party where you came home and handed out cake and brownies and tea to the alumni. The alumni came home to pass on their experiences at Queen's to the people who are here now. And conversely, the undergraduates arranged a kind of welcome for them. I would think the high point of the football culture at Queen's was in the 1960s, and under Coach Tyndall. Tyndall is the kind of quintessential football coach. He's got a crew cut, he's got chomping a cigar, he wears a baseball cap, he looks stern.
Frank was a very quiet, soft-spoken guy, kind of ironic sense of humor. He always smoked a cigar. He was a wonderful strategist. Throughout the course of the week, nobody was better at watching film and preparing offenses and defenses and so on and so forth than Frank Dimmock. The 60s came along, and they were really quite something. It is interesting when I was doing the book, you know, if you look at the individual seasons in the 60s and you think about maybe 4 or 5 key games that had Queens won, right? They could very easily have won the Yates Cup every year in the 1960s, right? Which was the pinnacle of college football. In my particular period, we had 2 undefeated seasons. Whoever won that league had, without question, the best football team in the country, right? So, and as I say, if you look from that entire run from 60 through 69, 5 games had they gone the other way, Queens would have won every year that year, throughout that decade. Yeah.
The point I've been trying to make is that homecoming is like a screen onto which you project the values of the university community. Not just about winning the football game, that's sort of the center point of it, but you project what you think is the strengths and the traditions of your community onto that screen for everyone to reconnect with them or for other people to see them for the first time.
In the old Richardson Stadium, there was no track around the outside, and so it will be a little bit like it will be for homecoming this time, with the stands sitting right on the track, so people are much closer to the play, right? And so it was always jammed. It was jammed. Now, most of the home games were always, you know, the stadiums were always full. In fact, away games were too.
And since then, for all sorts of reasons, I would argue that football has moved a bit towards the margins. They moved the football stadium out to West Campus. Fewer people went. It wasn't the old turf, you know what I mean?
There was a strong sense of the tradition being passed on, you know, this kind of warmth exercise.